In this movie, let's take a quick tour of the Revit user interface. Now, there are a lot of similarities between the Revit user interface and the AutoCAD user interface. They're both Autodesk products after all, but there's some unique differences as well. So in this movie, I'd like to focus on those things that are unique to Revit that you won't find in AutoCAD. So let's start here with the recent files screen that we're greeted with when we first launch Revit. And we talked a little bit about this in the previous movie, and we focused there on the templates that are available to us in the projects area. Now we have the projects area across the top, and it does show us the recently opened files, so you can see those listed over here on the right. If you want to work in a project you worked on previously, you can just simply click the icon and it will launch that project. If you want to create a new project from a different template than one of the ones that is listed here, you can click the new link there and browse to it here. Or you can click this open link and open an existing project. I'm going to go to my desktop, and in my Chapter 2 folder of the exercise files, I'm going to open a file called Condo Unit. Now, if you don't have access to the exercise files, you can really open any Revit file that you like for this exercise. Now, when it first launches, you can see that there are definitely some similarities to what you see when you launch AutoCAD. We have our application menu in the top corner, we have a quick access toolbar, and we have a ribbon. The first thing I want to talk about is the project browser, because you may recall in the previous movie that we talked about how AutoCAD creates a series of separate disconnected drawings, but in Revit, everything's in the same project file. So when you want to navigate around this project file and open up the various views that represent the different drawings, how do you do that? Well, you do that over here on this palette called the project browser. Now, you can think of the project browser as basically a table of contents. So just like a book has a table of contents that will tell you what you'll find in the book, where the chapters are and what pages they're on, think of this the same way, that here we can see that we have a series of floor plans, or we have some ceiling plans, or 3D views, or even elevations. So if you want to open one of those views, you just simply locate the view and double-click it. So here's a north elevation, here's a 3D view, and here I can go back to my level 1 furniture plan. Each of these views has a series of controls and settings that control just that view, and we can see that down here in the corner of the view. Now, AutoCAD has something similar on the status bar, but here, if I take this view and float it, and kind of move this over here, you can see here's a view control bar for the floor plan, and down here in the background, you can see a separate view control bar for the elevation that I have open in the background. So each of these controls are unique to those particular views. Notice here that my floor plan is currently set to 1/4 inch equals a foot scale, where my elevation in the background is at 1/8 inch scale. Now, if you look carefully at the furniture here, and I'm going to zoom in slightly with the wheel, you just roll the wheel a few clicks to zoom in, you can see that there's labels on each of these pieces of furniture. The size of those is determined by the scale. So if I change the scale in this view and choose 1/8 inch equals a foot, zoom in again, you'll notice that those labels are all now larger to accommodate the new scale. Those are all important features and will help you get around your Revit project. But the big thing you're probably wondering if you're an AutoCAD user is, where did my command line go? The command line is your primary interface for executing commands and getting feedback in AutoCAD. How do we do the same kinds of things here in Revit? Well, of course, you execute commands from the ribbon for the most part. We have those listed across the various ribbon tabs. And so if I wanted to draw a wall, I could click the wall tool. If I press the escape key to cancel out of there, if I wanted to add a door, I could do the door tool and so on. I'll escape out of there. Now, you may notice that when I clicked either of those tools, that the interface changed. So let me do that again. I'm going to click the wall tool, and you're going to see some distinct changes appear on the screen. So the part of the command line where it's giving you feedback and telling you which options, which settings you can configure for the command that you're running, that appears in a few different places in the Revit interface. The first is the options bar here right below the ribbon. You'll notice that all of the settings there, it says modify place wall. All of those settings pertain to the wall that I'm about to draw. Now, in addition to that, if you look right above that on the modify place wall tab, you can see a little toolbox there with a bunch of shapes. Now finally, we also have a properties palette in Revit, which is pretty similar to the properties palette you have in AutoCAD, and we can find that right over here, and there's a variety of settings that we can configure there as well. Now the part of the command line that gives you feedback, what to do next or what object you have, that occurs down in the status bar in Revit. So if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, it currently says click to enter the wall start point. So this is how Revit kind of communicates back to us and tells us what to do next. And of course, that means that I can just simply start clicking on screen. And you'll notice that the prompts are changing to either give me a feedback about the kind of snapping behavior that I'm doing, or perhaps what I should do next, like pick the next point of the wall and so on. And I'm going to escape out of there. You'll get similar behavior when you select an object or when you pre-highlight an object. So in AutoCAD, you can put your mouse over an object and it will pre-highlight. You can do the same thing here in Revit. Notice that the tooltip appears on screen. Now that's going to go away after a second or two, but notice down in the status bar, that same message still appears. It says walls, basic wall, interior 4 7/8 in this case. If I highlight a door instead, I'll get a different message, doors, single flush. If I highlight this bed, it'll say furniture, bed standard, and so on. So this is how Revit gives you some feedback of the object that you're about to select, or feedback about what you do next in the command that you're in. So when you're first getting comfortable with Revit, remember, your project browser is basically your table of contents, and that's how you navigate around the project, how you open your floor plans or your elevations or your 3D views. And even though Revit doesn't have a command line, all of the functions that the command line serves are represented in Revit just in various locations on the user interface. So your options bar, properties palette, and modify tab serve the function of giving you the different options and settings that you can do in a command, and the status bar gives you the feedback from Revit about what you're supposed to do next.